So, I finally decided to give Squad a try after having several people asking me if I've played it, so now I have, and I'm gonna give you my honest opinion about it. There's things I really like and some that I don't, and since I'm coming to this game from hella loose, that will be my go-to comparison for this video. I've only played around 8 hours, so not a whole lot, especially for this type of game, but I think I've seen enough to give you some first impressions on what I think about it. Alright, let's start things off with a brief overview. Squad is a multiplayer first-person shooter set in the present day, so there's modern-day military equipment and vehicles, you know, nothing too futuristic or crazy like you might get in a Battlefield game. There's 7 different armies or factions, each with their own unique weapons, vehicles and loadouts, and 20 quite large maps of which I've only played a few. Each map starts with a preparation phase, which I think is actually one of the coolest features of this game. In this preparation phase, each squad sets their waypoints and marks on the map, indicating where they want to set up their forward bases. That's these yellow circles that you see on the map. Different squads then get into different transport vehicles and load them up with ammunitions and construction materials. These aren't boxes that you have to physically move into the trucks. There's no actual in-game object here. It's all done through a menu and you basically add the supplies to the truck properties, if you will. Once the round actually starts, you drive the truck to your objective and the squad leader then sets down a radio and a building location for the squad to dig up using their shovels. Supplies need to be unloaded from the truck to this new location, which, as I mentioned earlier, is just done through a menu and is very fast and easy. This is the basic loop that you need to go through to set up new bases where your team can spawn on, which are called FOBs or forward operating bases. Squad leaders can also deploy a rally point, which will only allow squad members to spawn. These are essentially the equivalent to the garrison and the outpost that you find in Hella Deuce, but there's a key difference. When you respawn, you need to resupply yourself at an ammunition spot. So if you fired your bazooka, for example, you will be missing one shot unless you resupply. These ammunition spots, by the way, also need to get built. This means that if you're spawning at a rally point, you might find yourself in a spot where you have increasingly less equipment and ammunition with each respawn, unless somehow someone managed to get an ammunition crate set up, or riflemen can drop ammunition as well. So the way rally points sustain your presence in the front lines is quite different than in Hella Loose, at least at this point in time. These logistic mechanics where you need to ferry supplies from the main base up to the front lines, and where bases can't just simply be destroyed by a grenade, but rather require a lot of effort from the opposing team, that's one of the things that I like most about Squad. It really requires you to have a plan and to play as a team to be able to do the basic setup, and it allows you to place these forward bases basically anywhere as long as you manage to get supplies up there, rather than abiding by an arbitrary cutoff of, you know, this terrain is mine and this terrain is yours, like in Hella Loose. It is a superior system for sure. With that said, let's get to something that I don't really like, and that unfortunately is the gunplay and the infantry gameplay. However, this is more of a case of personal preference than the game being bad at it. It's actually really good. I just don't like the style of it. First of all, there's a stamina bar, and while I did enjoy the stamina mechanics in single player games like Breath of the Wild, I don't find it at all fun in a competitive multiplayer game. This works precisely as you would expect. You expend stamina by sprinting, and you need to stay still or move slower for it to gradually fill up again. The less stamina you have, the more weapon sway you get, which means you can't really run and gun without suffering from a significant drop in accuracy. You need to take things slow, or at least slower than in something like Hella Loose, and you need to plan your movement a bit more, since you don't want to run out of stamina while you're running across the street, for example. Squad aims for a more realistic combat experience, so paired with the stamina bar is the increased weapon sway in general, being able to adjust your sights to the distance, and just the overall feeling in general. This definitely plays more like a military simulation type game than Hella Loose, which has a more arcadey feel to it, kind of like playing Battlefield on hardcore. As I mentioned earlier, I prefer the way Hell Let Loose plays in this regard. I don't mind the fact that it's not realistic, because that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for quote-unquote realistic enough without making too many sacrifices to the game side of things. If there were a slider between arcade and simulation, then Squad is definitely more in the simulation side of things, and that's frankly something that caught me off guard when I first started playing. Given the amount of overlap there is between Squad players and Hell Let Loose players, I figured they would feel very similar, and they really don't. Whether that's a bad thing or not is entirely up to you. If you like the more realistic approach, then good news, because I think Squad really nails it. It's not taken to the extreme, but peeking a corner is definitely more dangerous, and gunfights feel like actual real-life gunfights. Not that I've, ever been in one, but you're basically hunkered down trying to hold an angle while being really careful not to expose yourself. Also, the fact that basically everyone has a full auto rifle paired with optic sights is definitely felt here when you jump in from playing something like Hell Let Loose, where full auto guns are fairly rare and pretty inaccurate at range. Everything is much deadlier in this battlefield. The weapons are better, the tanks are better, the artillery is better, which is precisely what you would expect from, modern day military. I'm not sure I did a good job at explaining precisely how these two games feel differently from one another, but basically if you're into more realism than what is available in Hell Let Loose, then you will definitely enjoy Squad a whole lot. The other major difference that I can think of is how important lives are in Squad. Every soldier has the ability to bring back anyone from the down but not out state, and if you want to give up and redeploy, you will be prompted with a message saying that your team will lose a ticket if you do. This means that your team has less than 200 redeploys available, which in a game of Hell Let Loose get used fairly quickly. In Squad, staying down until someone revives you is very much part of the gameplay experience. You can drag people to safety before reviving them, and only medics can heal you back up to full health, so there's quite a number of different mechanics based around the revive system, meaning it's both more impactful and fleshed out when compared to something like Hell Let Loose. I haven't tried the vehicles yet apart from driving them in the test range, because another major difference with Hell Let Loose is that you really need to identify enemies by their uniform, since you don't really get any icons to help you distinguish friend from foe other than a very light name tag appearing once you aim at them. While it's at least something, it doesn't really help when you need to take a quick shot, so you have to rely on the uniforms. Map design is quite different as well, with maps being much larger and with many more locations. One thing that really struck me is that they feel a lot less lived in than in Hell Let Loose. While you can go inside pretty much every building, they are all empty inside, and there is much less devastation in general. Whereas in Hell Let Loose, you feel like you're going through these places that have seen combat several times before. In Squad, it feels like this is the first time there's actually something going on here. There's also a lot of places to hide, a lot bigger open spaces, and a whole lot more verticality to the level design. This also contributes to the games playing substantially different from one another. Overall, I think Squad is a really great game, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you're looking for something that takes the realism up a few notches when compared to Hell Let Loose. If, like me, you were wondering if Squad is like modern day military Hell Let Loose, then the answer is quite simple. It's not. If anything, the direct comparison would be to something like Postscriptum. I'm personally much more interested in Second World War as a conflict rather than modern war, and I do like the more gamey, more arcade-like approach that a game like Hell Let Loose has over this more immersive experience that I found in Squad. But if you're drawn to those things, then definitely try this out. I think you will have an incredible time with it. Alright guys, that will be all for today. If you've played both games, then I'd love to hear your thoughts on them, so remember to please leave a comment. That's all for now, thanks for watching, and I hope I will catch you in the next one.